Hi, this is Dan Jurgens, and if you want to have a good time, keep listening to the Krypton Report.
It's a bird. It's a plane.
This is Jason J. Lewis, the voice of Superman on Justice League Action.
This is Mark Wade, writer of Superman Birthright.
And you're listening to
The Krypton Report,
the All Things Kryptonian podcast, including Superman and Supergirl.
We discuss games, movies, cartoons, TV shows, and comics.
Find us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter. Welcome to the Krypton Report. This is a special episode as we're building towards the premiere of Superman and Lois, which I know that I'm super excited for, as well as James. And sadly, James, the Man of Steel, is not here with me tonight. Yeah, he's out saving the world like we're supposed to be doing, but we can't all be as magnificent as James. So with today's topic, I thought I'd get another friend in. You're like, but who is it? Exactly. Who could it be? You've heard her before. She's been here once before. And I am welcoming back Kelly Gettner from the Phoenix Sisters Cosplays to talk about Lois Lane. Welcome, Kelly.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Lois is near and dear to my heart, so I pretty much jumped at the chance to talk about her. She was one of the first comic ladies I fell in love with via Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman. That was like my gateway drug to DC Comics. That and Batman the Animated Series. Kind of both got me really into DC Comics. So where do you want to start with talking about Lois?
Well, I think let's start first. You said that Lois and Clark was where you got, was that your first introduction to the character? Or was that the one that just kind of set you off that you were like, yep, this is the one I like?
That was my first introduction to the character.
Okay.
And that was, if I remember right, that was really my first real introduction to Superman. Like I'm sure I was aware of Superman and Lois because who isn't?
Mm-hmm.
But that was my first time really watching something with Superman and Lois Lane. And I just fell in love with both characters and how relatable they were. And Lois Lane is just, she's this character that is not just one thing. Like a lot of people like to write her off as the damsel in distress. And I take great issue with that because she's not just the damsel that's there for Superman to catch when she's falling. She's a career woman. She balances Superman out, and a lot of versions of the Superman story, most versions of the Superman story, she's there pretty much from the beginning, and she's the one who kind of helped, she's the one who names him first. She's the one who inspires him because he gets to know her from afar as Superman, and then he also gets to know her as Clark Kent, and he's inspired by her search for truth and justice. So, and she's, but she's also, she is feminine, even though she's like a career woman, she's still allowed to be feminine, and she's definitely a woman. She's not one of the, some female characters, it's like they literally just write them as a male character.
Yeah.
And change their gender to be female. And that's revolutionary too. Don't get me wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But she's allowed to be feminine. And that doesn't take away from her being the top reporter at the Daily Planet. Sorry, Clark.
Oh, I hear you. I think Clark is always number two. I think Lois is always on top, and I love the Lois Lane character more and more. She's grown, and she's sometimes been one of those characters people weren't sure what to do with. And most of the time she's a damsel in distress, quote unquote, is because she's sticking her neck out and doing her job and doing stuff and going places that are dangerous, and then she just gets in trouble and everything. Like, this is stuff that she would do without there being a Superman. Like, it's not like she's always in trouble because, like, one of my ongoing jokes with my brother and stuff when we were younger was we would watch Smallville, and my brother got to the point where he just started using the theme song and singing "Somebody Save Lana" because I felt like Lana was always in danger for just being Lana. Not because of like her doing anything, but just being herself. Always put her in danger, and that was something that I thought was hilarious. And Lois is like kind of the antithesis of that.
Right. Like she has a lot more agency than Lana in Smallville, because Lana in Smallville was the object of people's affection, whereas Lois goes out and gets what she wants. She's no one. I mean, yes, she's the object of people's affection, but she's not just there to be the object of their affection.
Right. Exactly. There's a reason why she attracts certain people.
Mm-hmm.
So take us through the character's origin. Like, what do you know about the origin?
Oh my gosh, her origin's incredible. Like that teenage boys in the 30s came up with this character that is, even by today's standards, she's still pretty feminist. To me, it still just astounds me. Like you go back and read that first Action comic, and it holds up pretty well. Like she's a female reporter in a time when most women didn't have careers. And so she's called Girl Reporter.
Yeah,
and she is.
They based her off of the term was like what, Gal Friday or something, like the slang type character term.
And they make a point in the book of showing that she has to work twice as hard to prove herself, and that she is, and that she's getting like the crap assignments, like she's getting the Lovelorn column. And then she's also has like, there's one time when she and Clark are out and some guy comes along and trying to force her to dance, and that's what she basically like gets kidnapped after that. But basically Superman's like, she doesn't have to dance with you, she doesn't have to go anywhere with you that she doesn't want to. And Lois also is like standing up for herself, even back then, like way before the Me Too movement, way before any of that. Lois has agency, and she's willing to stand up for herself and say, hey, I'm not interested in you. And she's never one to just go along and be polite and nice and smile and look pretty.
Now, did you know, maybe you did, that I am totally blank. Man, I suck. My book is over. I cannot grab it. I'm totally blank right now. The original model for Lois Lane, the inspiration of the character, was a woman from Cleveland who Joel Schuster had an attraction to, who then became friends with Siegel and Schuster, that Jerry Siegel ended up marrying.
Oh, I knew that.
So,
and it's wild.
There is a letter, and I meant to grab this off my shelf, that's in the Action Comics 80th anniversary edition that's written by their daughter. She was talking about how her mom was Lois Lane. Yes. And everything. So I just think, the man who, wrote Superman, he married his Lois Lane.
He did. And it's romantic, but it's also kind of sad that like they had Lois Lane come between them a little bit.
Yeah, it is very interesting if you read about I feel like there's a lot of I feel like heartbreak and like kind of loneliness for Schuster. If you read about him more so than Jerry. He had his wife, and very powerful. But that's the origin of the character, and I think Lois is great. We recently did all the discussions on the old Max Fleischer animated series and how Lois was in those, and she was very abrasive and out there for a character, like you said, at the time where she was a career woman, fighting to be treated equally. And I think that's a big stance, coming out the tail end of the Depression and everything. And I think she means so much to Clark. And she's a very interesting character, and we'll talk a little bit more about it as we dive in. But I wanted to bring this up real quick. I sent this to you, and we will not really share comments. We'll kind of hold some thoughts, but I thought we'd bring this up as we progress with our discussion, that the Superman homepage, back on January 27th, they closed this poll, so it would have been posted about after that. They did a poll. There were 318 votes, and it said, who is your favorite live-action Lois Lane?
Yes.
Okay, and I will go down. Number one, Terry Hatcher, 124 votes. Erica Durant, 96. Margo Kidder, 36. Amy Adams, 22. Noel Neal, the Superman serials and the Adventures of Superman, 21. Phyllis Coates, 10. The Adventures of Superman TV series. Kate Bosworth, 5. Elizabeth Tulloch, 3. Leslie Ann Warren from the It's a Bird, It's a Plane, It's Superman TV movie, 1. And Patricia Moran, who was the Lois Lane on the It's a Bird, It's a Plane, It's Superman Broadway musical. So I find that very interesting. And we'll bring it kind of back up as we talk. But first, let's talk comic. What are some of your favorite comics or series of books where Lois is that you really have enjoyed, that really represents the character? I know I mentioned you on our last podcast with James because we talked about that you're not a fan of All-Star Superman, how she's depicted in that. So if you want to talk about that too, go ahead.
Yes, please. So first of all, I love All-Star Superman in spite of that. That book definitely has a lot of merit, but they got Lois all wrong. How did they get Lois all wrong? I don't understand.
I'm gonna say this as like, I hate saying this because it's funny, because my wife would argue with me if she was here. Like, I'm a man, but I often think like a woman. My wife will say that to me at times, and I think some men, even talented writers, have a hard time of crafting and putting that woman character.
Right.
And I was thinking about this as James and I were reading it, what you had said, like, and maybe Grant Morrison just didn't know how to get Lois. Or the other thing I was thinking about is this All-Star Superman is kind of an Elseworlds non-canon type story. So maybe they just wanted to write this Lois different for this specific story. Those are my two kind of conclusions. But please go ahead and just go off. Tell us about why you don't like that Lois.
All right. Well, I will say she's not quite as bad as Superman's girlfriend, Lois Lane era.
Yeah, I mean, the time periods at times were not kind.
Yeah, we can't do a Lois Lane podcast without bringing that up. So I'll say that's the absolute bottom rung for Lois characterization. So we'll set the bar low there.
Yeah.
Because that was, sorry, I'm getting off on a tangent, but yeah, so just getting off on that tangent, Seduction of the Innocent came along, and that was that big lawsuit where they were like, oh, comics are, ruining kids, and so then the comics code was put into place, and comics basically were rewrote to this morality code, and I think that kind of reshaped how a lot of things were done, and comics got a little goofier.
That's when I feel like they became kid books.
They became kid books. Like they were always kind of more aimed at children, but then they became to the point where they were dumbed down. And even kids they don't need their stories dumbed down.
Right. Like
they need all age.
It just kind of became more like that's when we start getting that's most famous, I guess, is like the Batman, like that would go on later to be like Batman 66 and stuff, is like
the
goofiness, the outrageous stories.
And they had to make sure that Lois wasn't giving people dangerous ideas about what women should and shouldn't be. So she had to be after that happy homemaker life, and she had to show that women were conniving about getting men to marry them, I guess. I don't know. So
yeah, I mean, it's really kind of creepy, like the way that
very creepy.
You go back and look at some of just the way they framed women's characters. I mean, even some characters, period, was just awkward.
Superman in those stories came off as a dick too. Like, I can say that on your podcast.
Oh, yeah.
No, please. But so that's the bottom rung for Lois characterization, and also Superman Lois is above that. But I almost see echoes of that version of Lois in it, where she's just kind of a little more bubble-headed and interested in Superman, but not Clark, and just blinded by her obsession with almost marrying Superman. And so like Superman tells her, "Oh, I'm Clark Kent," and she's like, "No, you're not. You're that's ridiculous. Clark Kent is," and then she totally insults Clark. And then then he makes her that super suit, and so they can spend the day together, and she can feel what it's like to have superpowers. And she spends half the time enjoying other men fighting for her affections. And no, Lois in any good characterization would not want any part of that. She doesn't want men fighting for her affections. But the Silver Age Superman's girlfriend, Lois Lane, that's something that she would totally be all about.
Yeah, I mean, I've known Lois, the character, from the live action point of view. It's, I had the Chris movies, when I was young, and I had tons of stories about. It wasn't until I was much older that I realized that Superman 1 and 2 were different. Because I just always kind of remember them in my mind as one movie. I forgot which happened in what. So that was kind of live action, and then start getting into the comics. But as a kid, we had Superman the animated series, and I think Dana Delaney's performance was probably the best iteration at the time of Lois. I mean, you had Lois and Clark as well, but I love the animated Lois.
Dana Delaney is to Lois what Kevin Conroy is to Bat, in my opinion.
Oh, amen. Totally. Dana Delaney was one of those actors that could have played a live action edition given the.
Oh, yeah. I'm glad she didn't get that chance.
I had a lovely revelation one day when I was watching the movie Tombstone with my father, and I realized that it was Dana Delaney in it. I hadn't seen it in years and just was watching it, and then I was like, holy crap. And he's like, what? Look at Lois Lane. He's like, what? What are you talking about? Stupid son of mine.
Well,
but-
yeah, if you're not used to, like, you're not putting the face with the voice, it's easy to miss that. But yeah, she looked the part of Lois, especially in her, younger days. She definitely could have played an amazing in live action.
So I'm going to ask you one question. I don't want you to answer this yet. I want you to hold this thought.
Mm-hmm.
I want you to think, and we'll bring it at the end. Who would you like to cast, say, now, or maybe like not too long ago, within the past 10 years? So do you think should have played Lois Lane, or should play Lois Lane? Just think about that. I should have asked you like this way before. I'm totally sorry. You had more time to think about it. I'll let some people on the spot.
Then you get more honest answers.
or you get the, can I just message you later and like add it in? But I think the comics have done very well. She's gotten several of her own series. I actually really want to read this most recent Lois Lane series, and I haven't got a chance to do it. Have you read it yet?
No, I'm behind on comics. But I did read, so there was like I think it was a 2-parter, like just a little mini series that came out with the New 52, maybe. That was really good.
I know which one you're talking about. I read that one. At the time, like I read everything I could get my hands. That was going to the library. Libraries are great, and people forget that libraries exist. I feel like, 'cause I'm always referencing, like, I just went and picked up all these trades at the library, and our library even here gets individual issued comic. So
That's
great.
nice.
So you can go and like, read too. It's hard to stay like on like completely caught up sometimes, but it definitely is a great resource to, if you just want to fill in the gaps in something, be able to dive into.
Nice. Interlibrary loan is the best. That's how I filled in a lot of my reading gap.
But I really do want to read the most recent Lois Lane, because I've heard it was really good. It was called like Lois Lane, Enemy of the People.
Ooh. I need to get that one.
So as far as comics goes, have you read any of like when they did the Rebirth, or the Superman? Was it? I always get the Lois and Clark right before Rebirth miniseries.
Yes. So when they had John, and I read a little bit of that, and that's pretty good. And then the Super Sun stuff. I mean, I know that she's not the focus in that, but the Super Sun stuff is pretty good too. Like the fact that they were allowed to so DC doesn't like to let their characters grow up. So the fact that they allowed Lois and Superman to kind of grow up a little more and have a kid that was a preteen was pretty cool.
I love so Rebirth happened in 2016. And so like you have the end of 2015, end of 2016 is when that Lois and Clark miniseries came out. And you had Convergence in 2015. And that's the same year that Solomon was born.
Oh, really?
So to me, like I loved reading about Superman becoming a dad and then having a kid, because I'm like, I felt like, man, I connect even more now with this character.
Awesome.
And, and then John, of course, was, in most of it was like 8 or
Right.
10, 8, 10, depending on when you fall in the books. And now Solomon's 6. And it's just, I don't know, it's like really cool. I really liked seeing Superman like that, because I feel like as a character, like it's funny to me because Superman is the character that would be like the best dad and be like the best like partner, but yet he mainly works alone. Like he doesn't have really his sidekick. I feel like they take that away from him. So
Right.
I like the idea of Superboy and Superman working together. And I like that Superman, that era. Like, I really like the Rebirth era. And I liked seeing the dynamic of Clark and Lois as husband and wife.
Yes.
Because, like I've read a lot of 90s comics. I'm actually in the process of kind of trying to read some Golden Age straight through, which is going to take me forever, but whatever. So, it's like you read a lot of the older, like the Death of Superman, stuff like that, The Wedding. You have great Lois
those
and
are
Clark.
some good stories.
But, I've said before, like I had read comics, but not really like into, because it was hard to find. Because comic shops and stuff got harder to find around my area. And then when I started driving, I could go to shop. But when the New 52 happened, it was like one of those, the New 52 happened, there was a small shop right near my house. And then I discovered that the library had stuff.
That's so nice.
So I really got into, I was about, the New 52 was probably about a good year and a half into everything when we moved here, and I was able to just like absorb everything from the library and then, start getting stuff from the shop. And so I read all that, and it was cool in one sense because they were building a strong friendship of Lois and Clark in the New 52. But they hadn't got the romantic side yet. But then, when we got to the Rebirth, they brought in this history, and we got to see older, matured, married Lois and Clark. And I'm like, this I like. Because I feel like so many stories about these characters are like the start. And then we get into the story, and they're like, let's take it back. And I want to see, their life together and them and how they work. And I hated when they did the Bendis took over, and he did the whole Age of John and like took him out of the story. Right. we can make a podcast about that. So I'm not as well versed in a lot of the Lois Lane comics as I'd like to be, but I find the character just as important to Superman. There's a reason why this man with all these powers and ability is madly in love with this Earth woman. Like, there's a reason that he is so drawn and attracted to her. And I think we'll just start it. We'll start at the beginning and kind of moving. Some of the stuff I want to say goes along with like interpretations and iterations of live action. So let's take it back. Running back to we'll start with Phyllis Coates. A little easier, a bit more linear, kind of like do that instead of like the no Neo Phyllis Coates, no,
Right.
But I will say, Phyllis Coates, I have not watched that much stuff with her. A little bit. And she was okay. I think she served her purpose, but she wasn't as memorable.
Right.
I think she fit for the time. Like, she was that character, but a little bit like we were talking about, like she was trying to do more, but she still kind of fit into that time bubble.
Right.
Please feel free to take and run with anything you want to say. I can talk a lot.
Oh no, that's fine. I have to admit I have not really seen Phyllis Coates, so I can't comment on her. I've seen a few episodes with Noel Neal. And
I've been working my way through the George Reeves Adventures of Superman slowly. I used to watch it some with my grandma when I was younger. And I've been watching it, and only own season 2 or 3 of. It's hard to find.
Yeah.
But then they took it off. It was on DC Universe, and it was one of those shows that I was working through. Like when I had time, like I like to sit down and actually watch it and not just throw it on in the background. I was working my way through that, Superboy, and now those two are series that have yet to appear on HBO Max, which makes me mad. Just throwing that out there. Those should just be on there and left on there without ever like taking it off. They're old catalog series that I want to just watch, but it's the same thing how with Noelle Neal. Like I've seen a little bit more with her, and I think she had a little bit more of a spunk to her, a little bit more sweetness to her as Lois.
And I have a soft spot for her because she, when I started visiting Metropolis Man Celebration, she was such a mainstay there. And just First Lady Metropolis.
Yep.
Like the real Metropolis in Illinois.
Yep.
And so I definitely have a soft spot for Noelle Neal. But you're right. Like I agree. She had a nice spunk, and she was a great great Lois Lane. I can talk. She's a great Lois Lane for the time period.
I want to say that Phyllis Coates, I could be wrong on this. I will admit I am wrong sometimes. Appeared on an episode of Lois and Clark, but Noelle Neal appeared in Superman the movie alongside Kirk Allen.
Phyllis Coates might have been Lois's mother.
I think she was like her mom in like one episode, and then later they changed the actress when her mom was because I think that's what it was. It feels right. And then Noelle Neal made an appearance in Superman Returns as Gertrude, the old woman who signs her fortune to Lex Luthor.
I love that that's such a tradition in the Superman property.
I do too. It warms me that there's that connective tissue. And it's so the next live action Lois is Margo Kidder.
Oh, love Margo.
All right. So I'm gonna ask you something when it comes to Margo as Lois.
Yes.
We were having this debate, and we were talking about, in Superman the movie, Clark is so quick to want to tell Lois that he's Superman. Like we have the scene where she's getting ready and he's Clark and he takes off his glasses and he's thinking about it. And then we have, in Superman 2, where he tells her and he gives up his power. But my issue is I don't feel like she ever loved Clark or like she was always in love with Superman.
I agree.
I don't think she would have liked him when he gave up his power. Like I never felt that kind of relationship connection from the characters that she would have been invested in Clark as a person with no powers. Because, I think one thing that's interesting about, and we won't do this rabbit hole right now, is with Reeves' performance of how much different his Clark and Superman are, which is kind of great in the character, but really hard when you try to put the Lois connection in there, because she's seeing two distinctively different people and not really getting to experience as much of the real person.
Oh, I totally agree. And Margo even has said about her performance that she made it a point to play it differently. So when she was with Superman, she was playing it as though she was Twitter pated, head over heels in love. And then with Clark, she was no nonsense, not interested. And I agree 100%, which that was one of the failings of the love story in those movies for me, because I don't know. I guess the way Lois and Clark did it was kind of the way I like it, where it's a love story, or it's a love triangle built for two, but at the end of the day, Clark Kent is a big part of who he is.
And I mean, I agree. We've had this whole discussion about the extent of the Clark Kent persona, of how far and how much you make it. I think Chris's performance is great as Clark. But on one side, I think it's a little much, because the idea is to like blend in and kind of, you don't want people to think that you're Superman, but if you're too far one way, you're in people's minds consciously, like because you're standing out in a different way. So they're going to keep you in their mind, like, oh, Clark this, yeah, he wouldn't, but they're still thinking about you all the time, instead of you're just kind of like there and like a passing by, like, hey, kind of person that someone just waves to, and there you go. They're going to kind of keep you like, oh, that Clark, like you're always going to be in their consciousness.
And then eventually,
they
start to doubt, like, can anyone really be that clumsy? Can anyone really be that?
Yeah,
that much? That's a good point.
So I just throw that out there. But it's weird because like Margo in the first film is okay.
Mm-hmm.
She's not my favorite Lois. But
That's
I always try to look at things of like the time they came out.
Yes.
Like, and where the character was. And what it kind of represents, like what's her point in all this? Like, is she just his love interest, as or his friend? So the next live action Lois is probably, like you said, and like for me, like this was the first one I connected with the most, and that's Terry Hatcher on Lois Clark.
Yes.
And I think her Lois is great.
Oh yeah, fantastic. So many layers.
I mean, the way they introduce her at the beginning, she comes in dressed like a man, off the street. They introduce her in a such non-sexualized female way.
Yep.
And we have the scenes of her like at home, kind of crying and eating ice cream, but then we have the scenes of her being, at work, being tough, and then like charming Lex, and they found a really good way of capturing her in all her dimension.
Yes, that's why I love that character so much, because she's allowed to be everything, full range of emotion.
I loved it because in that show, you really got to see her fall in love with Clark and Superman. And it's in the episode after Clark proposes to her, when she says to him, spoilers, but who's asking, Clark or Superman? And then he talks to her. He's like, I wanted you to love me first before the other part. Like, and I think that's a big deal. For Clark is like, he's like, I want you to like love me before you understand that I'm also Superman. Before you fall in, because you don't want someone just to love you because you are Superman.
Right.
One of my favorite things in that show is just their relationship, period, of how they're friends, and he picks on him and he takes it, but then he also kind of shows her up at times, and she also gets jealous at times from other females showing Clark attention, and then when she has certain times she breaks down or whatever, Clark is there for her and does things special for her and genuinely cares for her.
And there are moments when he's real early in his Superman career, and he like there's a moment when he's about to give up, and he's about to give up as Clark. Well, he's about to give up as Superman, but he's dressed as Clark, and she says something to him like Superman wouldn't give up or whatever, and that like strengthens his resolve. And then they're like he's considering cheating at poker again as Clark, and she's like Superman wouldn't cheat, because they're talking about how Superman could cheat with all his powers. Jimmy and Perry are talking about that, and she's like Superman wouldn't cheat, he's too noble. And then Clark like decides against cheating, and like so you just see all these little ways that Lois helped form the hero he becomes. Like he's still, he's still his own hero, and he's still amazing on his own, but she helped shape who he is.
Yeah, she helped, she helped show him that the people that he saves and interact with, the appreciation that it does matter. Like when he kind of will get down on himself, like we'll see, as it goes on, like she's not his only anchor to the world, but like she helped keep him grounded. His
right.
Like spoilers for anyone who's played Injustice, the video game. In that video game, Superman on the other Earth, they don't ever give it a number, but is given a combination of Joker gas and Scarecrow's fear toxin that makes him think that his wife, Lois, is Doomsday, and he basically ends up killing Lois, thinking it's Doomsday he's fighting, and then
she's pregnant when he kills her.
Yes, and he just loses it. Not he murdered her, but like that was his world, his life. And I mean, think about Superman the movie, like he, flies the world backwards because she dies. And that's, his connection.
Yep.
And I think it's one of the best relationships. Like, Jania and I, when we weren't married yet. We were dating. I think it was our second Halloween we had together, because we always do Halloween parties together. We went as Clark Kent and Lois Lane.
Oh, I love that.
And we joke often. People, he'd be like, "Oh, like I want a Romeo and Juliet, like love." I'm like, you basically want to be irresponsible and kill each other and kill yourself,
right?
Like, and I'm like, no, I want a Lois and Clark, or even a Jim and Pam for all you Office fans out there, or even Dwight and Angela, or even Michael and Holly. I can think of more references better than Romeo and Juliet.
Or like people who say they want Hurley and Joker. Like
those are just idiots. Those people just they want to be in a cycle of abuse and control and just don't understand what they're saying.
Yep. But no, I agree. Lois and Clark. That's it. That's a good. Those are goals right there.
Exactly. I'm sitting here looking at my picture. We're talking of me and Dean Cain. Yeah, thumbs up, buddy. And side story, like it bums me out that they were never able to get Dean and Terry Hatcher together in a scene on Supergirl. They both came back.
Yeah.
They even appear in the same season, but not in an episode together.
That would have been nice. That would have been moving.
It would have been very nice. So the Lois and Clark dynamic is core to the character. And I think in some ways, like with the New 52, they spent so much time focusing on the friendship part. I think when it started to kind of wind down, like they're like, well, we hadn't got to this, so not worry about it. And that version of Superman was never really in love, like had that relationship with Lois. And it, for a lot of readers, it felt like something was missing. I understand both sides of the argument, because she is so staple to his being.
Yeah, instead he was romancing Wonder Woman, which I love Wonder Woman, but you just lose something when instead of him falling in love with the mortal, it's very important that the Lois is pretty, but she's not a beauty queen. That's very important. She's not, and she's mouthy, and she's got a temper, and she's very, very human. And Wonder Woman is this Amazon princess who's also an amazing character, but Wonder Woman and Superman together is just not a good pairing, I think.
I like the dynamic of Wonder Woman and Superman relationship. Like, have you watched the Death of Superman animated film?
Yes, that was really well done.
So in that continuity, we have Justice League War, where they kind of meet, and there's this little flirtation between Superman and Wonder Woman. And then it's in the sequel, Justice League Thrones of Atlantis, that they get together. But I like when we get to the Death of Superman, how that's addressed. And they don't forget that they did it, but like there's the references where it didn't work out. Because I could see them being attracted to each other. Like,
oh, yeah.
They're both so powerful. And there's that aspect of like feeling alone and all that. But I like how Clark admits to himself and that, like, everyone else sees it and everything, that he's in love with Lois. And I really liked the fact that they got a husband and wife team voice Lois and Clark in the Death of Superman and then Reign of the Superman.
Yeah, that voice casting was amazing. And they did it really well where Diana and Lois had their like bonding moments, and Diana was a friend to Clark, and it was just like, look, we didn't work out romantically, but I still care about you.
Exactly. That's a great version on the animated front. Besides Daniel Delaney, I like the way they did Lois a lot in Death of Superman. That's actually one of my favorite Superman films, period. And I'm always on the defense of like, I hate that so much Superman doesn't matter in movies or books or whatever until he's dying. I've gone on that tangent multiple times, because even All-Star Superman is a Death of Superman story. But I really like the way they did Lois and Clark and the relationship and everything in that film. Have you watched the Superman Man of Tomorrow animated film?
I was just going to bring that up. Yes, I just finished it this week. I thought that one was good.
I really liked it. I really like the way they start with Lois and Clark. Like, I like how Lois comes in. I think it's very true to character. So it's a kind of I hate using the term modern update, but
it is.
Yeah, I mean, that's what it is, but it works. It feels great on the character. I love how she's not an established reporter per se, but she's getting there, and kind of her and Clark are kind of coming up at the same time. And I really like that version in animation a lot.
And that voice cast also is just amazing. And that's a movie where he's not dying to be important. He just is awesome.
I like that movie for so many reasons. The only thing I can say negative about it is I'm not a Lobo fan. And he serves a good purpose in the movie, but I'm like, I could do without him.
Yeah, that's fair.
But I understand his importance to the story, because it's a really good point. But we've talked about that film before, but I definitely really like that movie. There's a lot of good things in that movie. That's another like cast that could almost do those characters live action well.
Oh yeah, for sure. Actually, I think you're giving me an easy answer to that question you asked me earlier. I think Alexandra Daddario, or however you say your last name, would be a perfect live action Lois right now. She's like the right age. She has the look. She voiced her really well. So that's my answer.
Well, I'll just go ahead and throw mine out here since we're there. I think like my perfect Lois like Lane, and this is nothing against a certain person we'll get to, but I really thought when she officially died in the Marvel universe, I always thought that Haley Atwell, who played Agent Carter, would have been an amazing Lois Lane.
Oh, I could see that. She would absolutely make perfect Lois Lane.
That's who like has been like my background, Lois Lane for a while.
I could totally see that.
So let's jump back into the movies. We're going to talk with this Lois Lane, and I don't care who you are, nobody likes this Lois Lane. This is nobody's favorite. So we're just going to,
except for 5 people apparently on the Krypton site poll.
I'm going to say they just did it just as a joke. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt because
Who are those 5 people? I'd like to meet them.
Hey guys, would it be funny if I did this? Yeah, dude, that'd be hilarious. Because I'm not really going to touch on the Leslie Ann Warren, It's a Bird, It's a Plane movie, just because hardly anyone's ever seen it.
Yeah.
And it's such, if you have, you'll understand, like, it's such not the characters. It's just a very goofy, campy TV movie. And so I'm not diving down that because it's really hard to dissect because nobody has ever seen it. And I've never seen the Broadway production, so I can't really go into context about that. But Kate Bosworth, Superman Returns, is horrible.
Yep.
First of all, she's horrible by herself. She's also horrible at the fact that she's supposed to be like Margo Kidder. Like Brandon Routh, they're like, oh, hey, he looks like Chris. It's supposed to be a continuation of Chris. Give us a Chris performance. But Kate, you just do whatever it is that you are doing.
I don't.
First of all, she was way too young to be Lois Lane at this point in Lois's life.
Yep.
She's not strong. She's like the damsel in distress, pain in the butt Lois that like people, when they talk about Lois, they think like, yeah, she's always, falling out of something for Superman to save her. That's this Lois.
Yep.
I can't stand her. Not that her characterization, not her as a person, that's stupid, but talking about her characterization, her acting ability to create this character was horrible.
Yeah.
I did not believe the character. She felt like just only Lois Lane by. She almost felt like to me a little bit more of the one version of like a Cat Grant character before they kind of tried to make Cat Grant like where they tried to make her like sexy like they did in Lois Clark, or they tried to make her like what she is now in the comics and later on Supergirl and stuff. She remind me a little bit more of the second Cat Grant on Smallville in that kind of mold. Even though Kate Bosworth first, but anyways, she reminded me of just some of the stuff I'd seen in the comics. But thinking there's nothing. Yeah, like if you didn't tell me it was Lois, I would have never thought it was Lois. Like, oh, they got a new character. That's cool. Who's this?
Terrible. It was so disappointing. So disappointing as a Lois fan.
You're like, Lois is awesome. What? Not this. Not this.
Palette cleanser, though. Now we get to move on to Erica Durant, who. So Smallville had so many stupid rules.
Yeah.
At first, they couldn't let her do anything Lois like at all. But in spite of that, she is an amazing Lois.
Spoilers. Erica Durant's my favorite.
Yeah, mine too. Favorite live action.
Yeah. And I'll say one is because of her chemistry with Tom and the journey they get to take together and the amount of time she got to do the character.
Yes.
You go to those early episodes, like when she first shows up, it probably because she was blonde.
I know.
And she didn't get to be very Lois because when Smallville started, I said this, like, after watching the early episode, I was watching it with my mom at the time, and I said, it makes perfect sense why Clark's going to fall in love with Lois Lane. I'm like, his best friend and the girl that's his friend that he loves, you put them together, and that's Lois.
Yep.
So I'm like, before like they brought her on or anything, I'm like, it makes total sense why when he meets Lois, he'll fall for her because she represents the two most pure women that he has a relation.
Yep.
And then when they brought her in, was like, oh wow, okay. And then she just kept popping up, and and you get to see her and like Clark and develop their friendship and all this, and then it's not till really season 8 that she gets to be Lois. They slowly start darkening her hair. Like they make her brunette, and then they eventually get her to like, pretty much almost black hair in season 10.
Yep. Season 6 is when she starts being a reporter, because that's when they allow that. No, season 5. 5 is when they allow her to be a reporter. That's right.
Yeah, she starts with the tabloid rag, and
she works her way up, and I love it. She has a whole journey. Oh my gosh, I love it.
And I like you get to experience her like from the different sides. You get to see how she is because of her dad, and then of course in Smallville or in Superman tradition, Carrie Hatcher plays her mom.
Perfect.
Which is great in the episode where it's a video of her mom. Her mom, the story had died, and you get the the sense of Lois. You get the whole military brat, because it was.
Yep.
Was it after Crisis or before Crisis that they changed him from Dr. Sam Lane to General Sam Lane?
I think it was
right after Crisis. Yeah. Yeah, that sounds right.
It's a good change. I think Lois being a military brat and then having some hand-to-hand fighting skills because of that is a really good addition to the character.
Yes, and having her dad, like her mom dying when she was young, and her dad raising teenage girls and always being around more militaristic people.
Yes.
And how that instills in her, and she has her boldness, but yet we have to see a lot of her reservedness. And I just feel there's so much, like, Jania will watch Smallville with but what's funny is she loves Michael Rosenbaum as Lex, so she'll watch like with him, but she can't stand Lana, but she loves the last seasons with Lois when she's really Lois. So she'll watch seasons 8, 9, and 10 with me because she enjoys the Lois and Clark dynamic. And that is the first kind of Lois where we get this new kind of thought process of Smallville's weird anyways, the way they did stuff. You just kind of have to accept it for how it is. But we get she knows he's Superman technically before he's really Superman.
Yeah.
But and I like that. I like that, Lois in Smallville, Erica is already is in love with Clark and has admiration and attraction to the Blur just for the person and what he's doing before ever seeing him. And then to find out they're one and the same, she hasn't fallen in love so much with the Blur because I hate that term, by the way, but or the red blue blur, like
that is a tongue twister, like ridiculous.
Because she never really saw him or anything like that. So she had an admirational love for him and an interest. And then when she finds out that that person and the other person he's known and loves and admired are the same, it's like, boom.
Like, of course, it just makes sense, and I just love you more.
I've said like Clark, Lois is like Superman to him because of her actions, her boldness, her skills.
Yes.
He respects her and looks up to her and is just impressed. And that's why I think like it's a hard character to get, because you want her to be feminine and have this feminine style allure to her when she's trying to make her way through stuff. But you also want her to be very down to earth. But you don't want her, you don't want to give her like manly trait. Like, oh, just make her kind of manly.
Right.
But you wanted to make her to where she feels human, like approachable, but yet you're kind of nervous because of just her personality. And like you said, she's attractive, but she's not like supermodel kind of like otherworldly attractive.
I love the her introduction in Superman Birthright, where Clark's introduction to her is her just telling off some jerk and like dumping a little garbage can over his head, and then Clark just looks at her with this stunned face, like, I think I'm in love.
Yes.
And that to me is like, that's one of my favorite Lois Lane comic book incarnations is Birthright. Like Mark Waid is an author that can definitely write a good Lois Lane.
Oh yes, I interviewed Mark Waid years ago, and I'd love to like do it again, because the recent short story he had in one of the death metal collections recently, it's like just a couple of page Superman story. He captures the character so much in those few pages that the $10 book is worth the price just to get those Superman stories. Like,
I'm not surprised. He's phenomenal.
I wish he would come back and he would do another Superman story or Superman book, or give him a new Superman Elseworld tale. Like, I don't let him write his Superman. One I need to revisit is the Superman Man. What is the title? I have it on my shelf and I feel dumb. But it's the one that technically was written back in 2006, that they didn't release until just recently. Oh, I'm trying to get to my shelf. It was Marv Wolfman who wrote it. And I need that one. We were just talking about Elseworlds Tales. What did you think of Lois, real quick here, for the Superman Earth 1 series?
I have to admit I didn't read that one. What did you think of her in that one? I really have to read it. It's on my list.
I like her. I think he does a really great job of showing Lois for Lois at first, and then she's a little suspicious of Clark. But I really highly recommend you read that. Like, I love that Earth 1 series. I thought it was such a great Superman story that they do a good job of telling the story, but I had wished it continued on as like a monthly book.
Oh, yeah. I've been meaning to pick that one up. I just so many books, so little time.
One thing I loved about the Lois and Clark relationship, Smallville, jumping back a moment, is Lois comes into Clark's life when he's not looking to fall in love.
Yes.
He is all head over heels for Lana, but it's practically annoying.
Not just practically.
Bro, you should have just gave that up. But that's another discussion. And what I like about it is it helped really build their friendship. And that's how I met my wife. Is like, I was short story, but like I came out of a bad breakup relationship, and I met her because I was actually friends with her sister beforehand, before I was dating this other girl, and she didn't like me having female friends, so I kind of lost track of Jania's sister. And one day I ran into her at the mall, and ironically, or maybe it's not ironic, I was wearing a Superman t-shirt. This was before that's basically all I ever wear. So I had that on, and Jania saw me and everything. And then I just started hanging out with her sister again, and then met Jania that way. And we just kind of became friends. And we built up that friendship aspect first to our relationship before, anything more happened. And I think on Smallville, that's what I think I really gravitated towards, because they got to build that friendship relationship to where one day it just kind of becomes obvious in your brain, like, oh my God, like I'm in love with this person. Like I had, like you didn't see it, but you're like, they've been here all this time, and I just didn't really realize exactly how I felt to them. And I just, what's funny is Smallville has a very special place for me, because like that's Superman of like that era for me, because in my life, like when Clark was starting high school in the series, technically I was in my junior year. And then I kind of took 2 years off before going to college. So like Clark graduates and goes to college right around the time I start college. And then Clark drops out because he's a loser, but like Smallville like really represented Superman at that time in my life. Like he's in high school, I'm in high school. And, that series started when I was in high school, and it ended right after I got married. So I had this whole series in my life, and not to jump ahead, but like Superman and Lois is the series that's kind of like this Superman now as a father, married later on in his life, that kind of reflects a little bit more, not perfect, but like where I am in my life now.
Oh, that's
so it's like,
Kismet.
Yeah, exactly. Perfect. I'm like, all right. And we'll talk a little bit more as we get there, but I just have a very special like love for Smallville, and that Lois and Clark relationship, I feel like kind of mirrored mine and how I met my wife. And I have this joke that I love to put on a t-shirt, and I told this to my wife before. I was like, you got to go through your Lana to get to
oh my gosh, that would be a great t-shirt.
And that's what I joke with my friend, and I'm like, God, man, you're just trying to find your Lois. Like, you thought you had her, but that was your Lana, man. You got to move on.
I love that. I'm gonna start using that.
Do it. It's a great, and because the one thing is like, in most stories, Lana and Clark still have a friendship, and I like the aspect in the books. Like we just read Superman for All Season, Lana being his best friend and like the first person he tells outside of his parent. And what's funny is, in a lot of ways, Chloe was almost more Lana Lang than Lana was on the show.
She really was.
And it seems like all these CW, WB shows always have this kind of character, but then they take that character and like split it into two characters. They like, we can't just have one version of the show. We have to like two versions or more of this character, or this idea. Like, oh, we're going to take this character and kind of split it and change it up and whatever. But
get me started on Arrow doing that with Black Canary. That's a whole other.
Oh, please! Like, why do we have two live-action Green Arrows and neither of them play out the way they're supposed to? With their like, as we're talking about Lois and Clark, we realize certain characters, part of what makes them a great character is their romantic entanglement and what that represents to their overall character dynamic. And I think the on again, off again, but eternal love that Oliver and Diana have. Dinah, sorry.
It's so easy to do because there's Dinah and Diana. I get it.
But we've yet to really do that on live action, and I'm like, it's a disservice to the Green Arrow. All right, moving on, because we're gonna. I don't know how much time you have, and I don't want to keep you too long, but
yeah, that's a whole episode.
So next is Amy Adams, and I don't hate Amy Adams. She's fine. Like, I'm not going to talk about her Justice League performance because that hasn't been seen yet. But you know, just looking at Man of Steel and BVS, I like how they write her strong. I like that she is abrasive and she's a truth seeker, and I like that she meets Clark. I like how she already knows he's Superman, and she's there as he becomes Superman. And I like the idea that, you know, it's kind of because of her probably that he helped get his job at the Daily Planet. So I like her character. In Man of Steel, there's certain parts I feel like sometimes I have, like, when they try to make certain women like tough characters, but you only feel like you don't feel it. You're just like, no, like, you know, I'm not feeling that you're really this tough character. And there's certain parts that I'm like, I don't feel like that. But she does a decent job. I'm kind of bummed they didn't dye her hair black, because hair color to me is a big deal with character.
Right.
Because in comics, you only have so many colors to deal with. When you give somebody a just hair color, it's part of their makeup.
That's true.
You know, it was always, especially with, like, Lana was always the redhead. Lois was the, you know, more black hair. But, you know, kind of play with brunette and stuff too. But
yeah, sometimes she is brunette, and so, and because Noelle Neal was redheaded, I kind of give it a pass. But I agree that Lois, in my mind, always has this like raven dark hair, so it is a little jarring to see redheaded Amy Adams. But like, acting wise, I think she did really well with the character, and I really liked how she portrayed her. But looks wise, it was a little jarring to not have a brunette Lois.
she played her very serious, and I like that Clark, like in the, you know, in the first movie, I feel like they're building that kind of friendship and trust. He's falling in interest to her. But it kind of feels weird when he kisses her, you know, like in the middle of all this destruction. Like, dude, hold off.
Yeah, that was weird.
It felt like it was one of those things like, oh, they'll do it. And I'm like, in the editing room, I would have been like, let's get rid of it. But, you know, there's certain parts I like how she's trying to help. She's involved. Like, she's just not on the out. I like that she's older than him, you know, because they kind of do that in Smallville with Erica. Like, she's a little older than Clark. And with Amy Adams, like, she's older than Clark.
Yes.
Definitely older than Henry. And I like that because it's so often the reverse of that, where you have this like 40-year-old man and they're like, hey, we're going to pair you up. She's this, you know, put some makeup on her. She's 21, but we'll pretend like she's older and act.
Yep. She's 21, and then we're going to pretend like you guys grew up together and are the same age.
Yep. And you're just like, look, I know I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed, but this doesn't play out right.
Yep.
But she's not horrible. Like, she's good. She's just not my favorite. And I think part is, you know, we've gotten 2 performances out of her, and, you know, we see her interact with Perry, and I think it's interesting how Perry has such a soft spot for Lois in those films, but he like always has a little bit more just frustration with Clark. And like I said, I like her as Lois, but I'm just not like, I'm not 100% sold. Like, I just feel like you're doing good, but there could be someone better who could do it.
Well, and it's hard because there have been so many other Loises, and you and I both already have our favorite. So, like, we're going into the character with baggage. Exactly.
You know, you have that, I think, you have that with like a lot of these characters. And it's tough, but I think Amy Adams did a really good job in Man of Steel, and she does a good job in BVS. A couple times where she's almost annoying, but not like in the good, like, oh, she's annoying, but I like what she's doing, but like more like you're just kind of annoying. So
Right.
it's an interesting take on the character, but it worked because they don't try to like really sexualize. Like she goes back to just being like, I believe her. Like I believe that this woman does that she does for a living, and where
Mhm.
you know, I can see why Clark would be interested in her.
Yes.
Um, which brings us to kind of the catalyst of why we. Oh wait, there's one more thing I was going to say. What I love about their relationship and BVS is, you know, I pull this. I know I keep talking about my wife, but you know what? It's my podcast, and I'm going to.
That's fine.
I pulled a thing on there, and I was like, you know, like we kind of say like I love you a lot, like, and I'm like I never get tired of saying it or hearing it. And I told her, like, she said to me, she's like, I love you. You know, like describing like when I say that to you, like this is everything that I feel when I say it. And I was like, when I say love, it's like I'm saying it as I'm about to grab the spear and fly off that day at my death. She's like, yeah, I feel you. Exactly. And you know, it encapsulates in that film how Clark, like, he loves Lois, like, but yet he's gonna
Yeah.
do what's right. He's gonna, you know, he's sacrificing his life and his love for her to go kill.
Yes.
And it shows, you know, how much she means to him, and it just shows like the importance of their relationship in his life too.
And her friendship, her bonding with Martha afterwards, and the one thing I liked about Joss Whedon's Justice League was the scenes with Martha and Lois. Those like tugged at my heart.
The one that got me was in the Death of Superman animated film, where Lois goes to talk to Martha and Jonathan, but they don't know yet that she knows.
Oh,
And she's like explaining in like cracks, and basically starts talking to someone who knows who he really was, starts breaking down, and like then they realize she knows who he was. Like that is such a great, like it is such a great scene, and it got me. And I'm like, dang, for like this movie and animation to get me like the way it did, I'm like, that's really good.
yeah. That was a really well done scene.
So, all right, so here's where we're going. Superman and Lois, the TV series, is about to premiere here soon. I cannot wait. I am excited. Every trailer looks amazing. It's like I said, like it's like the Superman that kind of feels like it's part of who I am now. And you know, when they announced Elizabeth Tulloch as Lois, I was like, oh, okay, because I had watched Grimm, and I knew her from Grimm, and I was like, okay, you know, at the time we'd already had Tyler as Superman, and I'm like, okay, so this Lois does feel like she's a little older than Clark, and you know, she appears in Elseworlds. That's where she got, you know, we first meet her with Clark on the farm when Supergirl shows up, and she plays a role a little bit in that episode. Then we meet her in Crisis, and in a lot of ways, I do not dislike her. I just kind of at the point where I want to see more. I want to see you really be Lois. Like you did a good job, but I want to see what else you bring to it. I think she can do it. I have, you know, high hope because what I've gotten from her so far feels like Lois, but in a lot of ways she hasn't got to do as much Lois-isms. Like we haven't got to see her like really be the reporter, and we're probably not going to. But you know, we saw her interact with Clark, and you know, help with like the book of Destiny. And here's like the thing is like if you look at Superman, all Superman property, okay, most everything that we have seen live action is like from when he first becomes Superman in his early career.
Right.
With the first few years, like, Superman the movie, Smallville, Man of Steel, The Adventures of Superman. It's all about when he first comes to Metropolis, meets Lois, becomes Superman. This Superman story and show that we're about to get, Superman and Lois, this is the farthest in any of their careers and relationship that we've gotten in any story.
I know. I'm so excited about it.
They've been together, like, the timeline's a little shaky just because we know Crisis had retconned some things. But even then, they've had to been married and together for at least 15 years. So, I mean, on the low end, he's probably been Superman for at least 20 years.
Which is a big deal to, like, yeah, I'm excited to see it. And,
that was
hope it does well.
That was one thing that I said about, like, John Cryer's Lex, was if you look at the career of Lex Luthor and Superman, this is the farthest we've ever got in live action of their battles, their story.
Mm-hmm.
I'm hoping that Superman and Lois does well. I feel like the network has faith in it. But I mean, all that to say is, like, I like Elizabeth, what I've seen, but we're gonna get a different Lois portrayal, because this is Superman's wife, Lois.
Right.
This is Superman's wife and the mother of his children, Lois. This is where we get to see the mature, developed, committed, long haul kind of Lois. Like, we've been through a lot together, and we're still going through a lot together. So it's going to be a different performance than we're used to, just because where the character is in their life.
Which should be really interesting.
I am extremely excited to see this. I'm currently doing my rewatch for another episode of the cast of all of Tyler's performances so far.
Oh, nice.
Just because, quick things. I feel like when he first showed up on Supergirl, he was treated very respectfully, and then I feel like when he started to reappear, like, they liked having him, but they didn't really, like, treat the character as well. They had trying to, like, push him to the back or find something else or take him, like,
right.
What do we do with him? So I'm kind of like reevaluating, just to talk about before we get into our premiere. But Lois is such, I guess we've been all over this landscape here. And we could go more if we, like, dug out comics, if we dove into all the different animation. Lois, we've kind of tried to hit some of our favorites and talk about what we, the live action stuff's always easier for fans and people to kind of get a hold of and digest. It's easy to see than diving into always the book. And I did, Superman needs Lois. Not only as his anchor to the world, but, like, she makes him feel human and normal. And he is still a man. He's a person.
Right.
And he needs that companionship, that friendship. Like, she believes in him when he starts to lose faith in himself.
Exactly.
And he admires and looks up to her. She inspires him because she goes out there with her words and her abrasiveness and stands up for what's wrong, not having his ability.
Yes.
And she is not scared. I mean, she'll stare down. She went after Lex Luthor and everything without having the abilities and the power that he had. So he admires her for her strength, but her humanity and her heart. And that is just, it's a part of him. Like, you don't really have him without her.
I agree. She's the only constant. Like, because back at the beginning, it was the Daily Star, not the Daily Planet.
Yep.
He wasn't flying. He was leaping tall buildings in a single bound. Like, his powers have evolved, but Lois Lane has been there since the beginning. So, and there's a reason for it, because she's very, very important. Even his parents' his parents were not really part of the story. They were just kind of briefly mentioned.
They're always briefly mentioned, and they're always killed off quickly.
Mm-hmm.
An elderly couple, or what do you call it? My favorite was on the George Reeves series, right? Whereas Eben and Sarah.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like, at one point, like, I think it was like Mary and Joseph or something like that. They had, like, and that's old comics too. Like, they didn't keep up with continuity, or like one writer, like the whole Luthor, where they use the U and they use the O. Until they eventually are like, okay, we're going to use it like this and keep it. This is now how this character is, because they just didn't really keep up with that type of stuff. So, you know, it would be kind of confusing. Like, even the location of Smallville. I've always said I think Smallville should have been Ohio. I don't know why Kansas chose, but it's not because I just live here. It's because, you know, I think it's
that's where he
farm
was born.
town. Yeah, I mean, that's where, you know, Siegel and Schuster are from, Ohio. And I mean, Ohio is all about football. You know, the whole Football Hall of Fame is here, and there's cornfields and everything here. So, I mean, it would make a sense for Smallville to be in Ohio than just Kansas, but, you know, whatever. But from day one, Lois Lane has been there as Clark Kent's friend, partner, ally, as well as Superman's friend, partner, ally, confidant. And I mean, their relationship is like that model relationship for people to look at. And if this TV series tries to tell me that Clark and Lois have problems when it comes to, like, Clark, you know, I do not want no, like, love triangle thing with Lana. Okay, I do not need her in my show screwing stuff up. She can pine after Clark all she wants. Clark cannot pine back. Okay, I will be upset. I will be an out. That's not
no
my
CW love triangles here. No, thank you.
That's not the story we're telling. Okay.
Aren't there kids teenagers in this one?
Yep.
Or like, so their kids can have love triangles.
Yeah, their kids are gonna be friends with Lana's daughter. So let both of Clark's kids, like, chase after Lana's daughter. Like, that's cool. Like, I really feel like this show, in a way, it's going to be kind of like the spiritual sequel to Smallville and Lois and Clark.
Yeah.
And, like, we're going to get these Smallville elements with the children, because one of them is supposed to develop powers, you know, yada, yada. But we're going to get, like, where Lois and Clark wanted to go with the parent. So we're getting this Superman show from a completely new perspective and angle. And that's what I'm so excited about. It's not just up Superman again. Like, it's we haven't seen before.
So exciting. Like I said, DC, and not just DC, but DC is so reluctant to let its heroes grow up and to tell stories of its heroes as parents and at different stages of their life beyond being in their, like, mid-20s and just starting out. And the different stages of life are interesting too. Thank you very much.
Right. Exactly. Like, you know, like, I like in Superman the movie, like, he appears as Superman at 30 years old. And Batman Begins, like, he comes as Batman when he's 29, 30 years old. He's in a different season of life, and that's okay. Like, to tell those stories, like, that was one thing that, like, excited me when Black Lightning first came out. Like, I was like, this is a show about a older, I hate saying old, okay, but, like, a more experienced man as a hero who's been doing this, but now we jump ahead in his life. He has children, and how does that affect him as a father and as a husband, and a superhero? And that was one thing I liked about when they put Ben Affleck as Batman was the idea of an older Batman who's been doing this, not the one who just started. It's fun to take those stories where we get to learn about the past histories without having to always start from the beginning.
Exactly. Like we know where they started by now. We know. So let's tell the next stage of their life.
And you can always do flashback stuff to tell us like fun little quirky stories about how they met, his disguise, And I think it's fun when Lois is in on it because she gets to help hide his identity.
Yes. Those make for some fun scenes.
Like he has an ally in like everything. It's not just him ditching and disappearing.
Right.
So I think Lois is a character that can be written cynically, and I think people have done it, and I don't like that. I think she wants to believe more in hope, truth, and justice more than anyone, but she's guarded because she knows how easily things can look, and people lie and hide the facts, and that's why she's who she is. Ooh, what a conversation. Lois Lane.
Yes.
Well, Kelly, I'm glad we got this time to chat again. Like we had talked about before, like, man, we could keep talking, and I feel like we could keep talking.
Oh, we definitely could, but no, I think I think you have a long enough episode to edit.
I think we'll do good. I like the rawness. But what are your favorite Lois moments, listeners? Like, what Lois do you like? What do you resonate about the character? What do you not like about the character? Tell me how much you don't like Kate Bosworth's performance. You know where to reach out to us. Kelly, where can people connect with you? Or if you like
Kate Bosworth's performance, please identify yourself. We promise not to mock you.
I really want to hear your argument. If you can make me a convincing argument of why you think she was good, I will listen non-judgmentally. I just want to hear if you actually can say it.
Yep.
Without being like, kidding.
I'd be curious to hear that too.
But where can people hear you or find you online?
Phoenix Sisters Cosplay on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. Drunk Comics on Facebook and Instagram. The Drunk Comic is just rolled into my YouTube, though.
All right. Well, we look forward to seeing your Drunk Comic episodes. And whenever you want to come back on, if you have a thought, please come back and talk. It's always nice to get new perspectives, new thoughts, new insight to the characters that we love and enjoy. And, my mom's eye, we worship. So,
Well, thank you so much for having me. This has been fun, and I will definitely be back. Both a threat and a promise.
Look up in the sky.